It's the right time for Right Time Radio. I'm Tom Bruno.
And I'm Lynn Donovan.
Welcome to Right Time Radio every Friday morning at 10 o'clock. And
I'm trying to let you hear it.
Lynn and
Stealing the headphones.
all right. Today is our tribute to veterans, and
Yes.
and actually we're going to do this. We're going to wrap it around Veterans Day, aren't we?
We are going to wrap it around. We're going to have something this Friday, and we're going to have something next Friday, and we hope that it honors the veterans that are in our community.
Got a lot of veterans here in our. Got a lot of veterans in our
We
studio.
do.
Let me just introduce our guests, or let's introduce our guests.
Yes.
First, over our narrator today is James Ellis. Say hi, James Ellis.
Hi, James Ellis.
Hi, James Ellis.
Hi, James Ellis. All right, James is he's a veteran of the theater.
Yes, he is.
He really has done a lot of theater stuff around town. In fact, you're going to be in Dracula, is that right?
I sure am.
Yes. What's your
Very
scary
cool.
character?
I'm going to be Renfeld.
Awesome.
Scary.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's going to be good. And that's coming up. What are the dates? You might as well make a quick plug for that before we get started.
We open 1 week from tonight, Friday, November 15th. Tickets are $12, $10 for students and seniors.
Very cool.
Yeah, and
Yes.
it's over at the Rialto Theater
Yes,
in Florence, because there's always something happening in
Colorado.
Florence.
Yes.
That's
All right.
what I hear.
Should be exciting. All right.
And then we go ahead. We have Deb, and she's known as Miss K. Tom, you're going to say her last name. Go ahead.
Krismanich. It's not that
Very
hard.
good. Yeah, there
You
you
got
go.
it. Yugoslavia. No?
Or something. I don't know.
I married Yugoslavia.
There you go.
That's what it is. That's
And
right.
she's here to talk to us about what Cotopaxi has going on. And then we have
As
Carol.
far as the Veterans Day
True.
celebration.
And then
or
Carol
memorial.
McNew is here as well. Step up to the mic and say hello.
Okay, hi everybody. You're used to me. Hi.
And she's going to tell us what's going on here in Canyon City to honor our veterans. And she's got a little more information too. So what we're going to do, we've got a lot of stuff today because there was just so many things submitted to us for Veterans Day that we couldn't narrow it down to one. We decided to do a bunch of stuff. So this is really going to be a cool day. Next Friday's the same way. We've got several different things going on to honor our veterans. Today, the very first thing we're going to start with is this little story that was submitted to us by Sue Haas. We've had her on the show before, and this is called Daddy's Adventure, and Tom is going to be the narrator.
All right. This is a fun story, but it's still pretty poignant for veterans. It's called Daddy's Adventure by Sue Hawes. I can see him clearly. My dad, Guy Worth Hawes, leaned back in his armchair, smoke curling from the cigarette in his right hand and a cold beer in his left. I, 8 years old, skinny, tow-headed, and wearing thick, pale green cat's eye glasses, am seated cross-legged at his feet. Did I ever tell you about the time I had my appendix out on a ship in the Pacific Ocean? He asked. I've heard the story many times, but I never tire of any of his stories. No, Daddy, tell me, I answer. I was a gunner's mate, second class, on board the USS Jefferson Davis, a merchant ship serving the U.S. Navy in 1943. We were bound for Inuiatak in a small convoy of merchant ships and light cruisers. So far, the crossing had been pretty boring. We'd seen a few Zeros in the distance and had a couple of sub-scares, but so far we were making good time. Until that day.
Ooh.
What happened that day, Daddy? I asked, breathless. That day was the day we ran aground. We were about 1.5 miles off some uncharted island in the middle of the Pacific when we ran right over the top of a coral reef. About half the crew landed on their butts. Here my mother interjects, shaking her head and saying, Guy, warningly. Daddy clears his throat, rephrases. The ship slowed down pretty fast and some of us fell down on the deck. He winks at me and I wink back. I know what he meant. Anyway, the old Jeff ground to a halt, and there we sat, stuck high and dry in the middle of nowhere. One cruiser fell out of formation to try to pull us off, but she was no match for the Jeff. They certainly couldn't stop the convoy, so we watched while the rest of the group steamed out of sight. Then it was just us. "Were you scared, Daddy?" I asked. Silly question. I knew there was nothing that could ever scare my daddy, but it was expected of me to ask. "Well, I guess if being stuck out like a sore thumb in enemy territory with nowhere to hide could make you scared, then I guess I might have been a little scared. We couldn't move. We weren't sure if the island off the port bow was uninhabited. Yeah, maybe I was a little scared. The captain posted lookouts on the bow and the stern and up in the crow's nest. I wondered, what would we do if we did see a Zero coming for us? Or an enemy periscope off in the distance? Talk about sitting ducks. We couldn't have been more of a target if we'd been painted fire engine red. But maybe the old man felt better, feeling like he was at least doing something. You know what else? I didn't feel very good either. Not just scared not good, but my stomach had bothered me for a couple days, and I was feverish. I was sure hoping we wouldn't need to use the guns because I was really starting to feel out of it. I had intended to go to sick bay when we landed on Inuitak, but here we were stranded, and I was feeling worse and worse every minute. I'm lying on my stomach now, chin in my hands, staring up at him. "What did you think was wrong, Daddy?" "Oh, I thought maybe I had a touch of purple spotted jungle fever, or maybe French Indian smallpox. Nothing major, you know. But I was sure feeling worse and worse by the minute." Finally, I asked a medic to check me out. He stuck a thermometer in my mouth and took my pulse. He poked my stomach, and I almost poked his nose. It hurt so bad. Then he shook his head like he was real worried. "Sailor, I think you need your appendix out. Now," he said. "Oh, Daddy!" I sat bolt upright. He took a swig of his beer and drew on a cigarette. He continued, "Now, there wasn't really any hospital stuff on the old Jeff. We had a sick bay, yes, but mostly for cuts and bruises and seasickness. Nothing major like an operation." I was sitting up on the deck, feeling worse and worse, when a medic knelt beside me. "Sailor, we can't wait for the destroyer that's coming to pull us off this reef. That appendix of yours has got to come out now." He stuck out his hand. I took it, and he pulled me to my feet. I stumbled, and he caught me. "Okay, son, we don't have far to go. Hang in there." I looked around, and I saw that some crew members had brought up a table to the deck from the mess. They had to take out the bolts that held it to the floor, take off the legs, and put the legs back on after getting it up on deck. One of the swabbies was scrubbing the table with carbolic soap. Another medic was sorting through a medical kit, muttering to himself. I took one look at this scene and stood up as straight as my sore stomach would let me. "No, sir, thank you, sir. I'll wait until the destroyer gets here, sir." "Not an option, sailor. That appendix has got to come out before it kills you." Frankly, I was willing to take my chances with the Japanese at that moment. I couldn't even imagine what was going to happen on the deck of the old Jeff Davis in the next hour or so. The only good thing about the whole situation was that the ship was at least so firmly grounded she couldn't pitch in the waves. I was staring at my dad by now. My green cat's eye glasses slipped down my nose and my eyes bugged. "What happened then, Daddy?" I could barely breathe out the question. The suspense was so great. Well, a couple of my shipmates helped me up on the table. I closed my eyes and waited for someone to put a mask over my face or something, but then I heard the medic talking to me. I opened my eyes and looked at him. "Son, we don't have much in the way of medical supplies on board. We're going to have to do this the hard way." Well, I don't mind telling you, I almost jumped right off that table. "What do you mean the hard way?" I asked the medic. He held up a bottle of 100 proof Kentucky whiskey. Where that came from, I never found out. It sure wasn't supposed to be on board. But when I found out what we needed it for, I was very, very glad for the sailor who had volunteered his stash. Right there on deck, we had us an operation party. I drank the whiskey, and my shipmates drank water to keep me company. You know that expression, feeling no pain? Well, after a while, that was me. And when I got to that point, the medic laid me back on the table, gave me a shot in my gut, and cut me open, right there on deck. He took out that bad appendix, tossed it overboard, and sewed me up. The operation was a success. My shipmates made me a bed out on the deck under the stars. A lot of guys slept on deck since it was so hot in the tropics. A few hours later, a destroyer steamed up, pulled us off the reef, and we sailed on to Inuitak. I spent a week in sickbay, mostly recovering from a massive hangover. Then I was back on duty, fully recovered. He took a long draw on his cigarette. I sat quietly at his feet, reflecting on his adventures. Susie, get me another beer. I love you, Daddy, I said, and walked to the refrigerator.
This is Right Time Radio, and with this is our Veterans Tribute, and we will be back after these messages.
Have you talked to your family about the medical care you'd like to receive when facing a serious illness? Advanced Care Planning can help you talk about what kind of care is most important to you. Fremont Regional Hospice can help you get that care. To learn more about what hospice can do for you, contact Fremont Regional Hospice at 719-275-4315 or stop by 1439 Main Street in Canyon City. Fremont Regional Hospice, your hometown hospice.
Come learn how to make delicious plant-based meals, which will help you feel and look good. Discover how to lose weight, fight cancer, and heart disease. You can even reduce inflammation with these quick and easy, tasty meals. This free two-part series is on Saturday, November 9th from 6:30 to 8 p.m. and Sunday, November 10th from 10 to 11:30 a.m. at the Canyon City Seventh-day Adventist Church located at 3180 East Main Street. To register and find out more, please call 719-315-2198.
Star Country 104.5 FM, proud to present live coverage of the Class 4A Regional Volleyball Tournament.
From the left side, Scopen over the top of the block and good.
This Saturday, the top-seeded Pueblo County Hornets play host to Denver North and Thompson Valley in Region 1 tournament play.
And here comes Gomez with a big hit. Got it!
I'm JJ Valentine. Join me for all the exciting action. Our pregame show begins at 9:40 a.m., first serve at 10. Don't miss regional volleyball action. Live online at network1sports.com and Star Country 104.5 FM.
KRLN weather, sunny, warmer, and breezy today. West winds 10 to 15 this afternoon. The high today around 66. Clear skies tonight with a low near 35. Sunny and much warmer tomorrow, the high around 75. 22 was our low this morning after a high of 41 yesterday. 60 degrees currently at the Weather Center.
Talk Radio 1400 KRLN.
Welcome back to Right Time Radio, our Veterans Day tribute. Today in the studio with us, we've got Des Krizmanich, and she's going to tell us. Hi, Deb.
Hi. Good morning.
Good morning. Hey, there is some stuff. You're from Cotopaxi, right?
Correct. I taught there for 30 years.
30 years. Well, you're just getting a good start. Well, you've got some great things happening this November 11th, which is Monday. Up in Cotopaxi, you've got something very special going on. Can you tell us about it?
We've got our Veterans Rock dedication happening at 11 o'clock, and the community is invited to join us if they are free. And we'll be right out in front of the high school with the big rock that we acquired and placed there this past year.
And so it's already in place, but this is the
dedication for it. Yes.
Oh, well, great. Now tell us what. Now, first of all, can you describe the rock a little bit? I said
Okay.
You've got a beautiful picture of it right in here.
Correct. Yeah, it's
listeners can't see that. I'll hold it up to the mic. Can you guys see it?
It's about a 6-foot rock above the ground. There is a flag with an eagle flying above it, and on it, it says, honoring veterans, past, present, future, thank you for your service. And it was carved by Wade Collins, a local artist who works in different mediums. And he actually lives in Saguache now, but has done lots of paintings, mural paintings. And so we contracted him to carve and paint it.
It is a beautiful, he did a great job.
He did. And we're really impressed.
And the paint stands out. So usually rocks, they're just engraved. And this one's got the red, white, and blue and an eagle flying over the flag. It's very beautiful.
Yeah.
Nicely done, Wade.
Yeah, he had done paintings before, but he suggested that it be carved because with the Colorado weather and the weathering and the sun and the altitude, it wouldn't last real long with just paintings. So he carved it for us using diamond tip blades, and then he painted it, and we'll continue to touch up to keep it looking as pristine. And then in the future, when he's no longer able to do it, our school will take over with the art students and do the touching up for the future. So it'll stay looking nice.
And what's the dedication for specifically?
For the rock, for the rock itself, we've also got, because we didn't put all the names of past veterans from Cotopaxi School on the rock. What happened was we realized there was nothing to honor veterans in between Canyon City and Salida, and wanted to do something to honor them. And getting all of the names would just on the rock would be too much. And so we are placing a flag next to any veterans of the military on their graduation pictures that are placed in the hallways at Cotopaxi, so that we can continue to update that in the future.
And that's not just for the students and graduates, but also?
We'll also honor, we've got a special framed picture there that is honoring any of the faculty and staff that have served in the military as well.
In fact, Carol McNew, who's sitting behind you, she's one of her relatives is going to be honored there, right?
Yes. Actually, and her husband and her son.
I didn't know about all those. Fantastic.
So.
All right. So where did the rock come from?
Mike Tezak from Mike Tezak Construction donated the rock to us.
He's here in Canyon, right?
Yes, he's out of Canyon City. His quarry is actually there in Texas Creek, and so that's where we went to choose the rock. And then his son Nathan and Josh Gillespie from R&R Construction in Cotopaxi actually loaded and delivered the rock to Cotopaxi and placed it, and then our maintenance staff has helped work on installing a flagpole next to it as well.
Very cool. And I understand you had some interesting people escort that rock.
We did. We had the Colorado, or the American Legion Riders, post number 13 out of Canyon City, escort the rock from the quarry to Cotopaxi School.
Very cool. I bet that was a fun day when they rolled in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, there's during the ceremony to dedicate this rock, are you going to have a speaker, or what's going to happen that day?
Yes, we will.
And as the public, we'd like to get the public out there, right?
Yeah, the public is definitely invited. And
what time does it start?
11 o'clock.
11 on the 11th.
Yes.
Of 11.
Yes, and we chose that because it was originally Armistice Day.
Okay.
In 1954, it was changed to the name Veterans Day to include the current conflicts that the United States have been involved with. So we're going to be having the color guard raise the flags. We've got one of the staff members singing the national anthem. We'll be talking about our Veterans Rock and how it came to be in Cotopaxi. We'll be recognizing any veterans that are in attendance. And then we have a guest speaker who is by the name of Eric Hadsell. He's a Chief Master Sergeant, and he just retired September 1st. He graduated from Cotopaxi in 1995 and has quite a decorated history in the military.
He was from your branch of the military, Tom.
Hey, go Air Force.
And so anyhow, I'm sure he will be a very colorful speaker for us. And then the American Legion Auxiliary, or 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 the American VFW Auxiliary, will be presenting flags to all of the students in attendance. And then we've got 2 more students that will be playing taps at the end of our program.
Nice. Very nice. Sounds like a really nice program that you're going to have.
I think it will be.
And if you haven't seen that rock, it's a beautiful rock. The picture's taken with snow on it. One of our first snows, I assume.
Yeah, just this last couple weeks.
Yeah. So come out and hear Eric talk and give his little speech. It's going to be a short speech, I understand. And
well,
we don't know.
Yeah, about 10 minutes or so.
10 minutes, okay. But thank you for putting that together.
You're welcome.
Were you on the committee to do all that?
Yes, there were 3 of us, myself and Nicole Richards, whose son had just went to boot camp, and also Joe Hartzell, whose 2 grandsons are active military. So anyhow, the 3 of us got together and worked on this project and continue, and I'm sure identifying more names as time goes on and to add to our list. And we've got a book that will be in the library where we're adding information about people's military past and past graduates.
Cool. It sounds like it's a really big project on your part, but a very wonderful tribute to our veterans.
Well,
here
thanks.
local.
It's kind of grown.
And before we came on the air, we were talking about the whole purpose of Veterans Day and why we remember, why we spend so much time and because if we don't safeguard that, the veterans are the ones, they're the people that are in the military currently, and they're out there defending our country all across the world now.
Right.
It has this kind of lighthearted one story that we just read shows. They're the ones that put their lives on the line, and so with us here secure in the United States within the boundaries of our land, a lot of times we just live our day-to-day lives, but we don't realize the price that a lot of people paid to make us safe and secure right here at home.
At every level.
Yeah. So, enjoy your lives, live your lives well out there because it's been bought with a cost.
That's
correct.
True.
Yeah. I try and remember this quote by John F. Kennedy. It says, "As we express our gratitude, we must never forget that the highest appreciation is not to utter words, but to live by them." And
Very
hopefully we
nice.
can all do that.
Yeah.
That's
Live,
great.
live.
All right. Well, we are going to have another commercial break, and we want to remind you this is Right Time Radio, and we are here every Friday at 10 a.m. And we want any of you who like to write, we want you to contact us at righttimeradio@gmail.com and let us know what you've got, and we'll see what we can get on the air. Now, we're going to go to commercial, and when we come back, we're going to have a little more intense story that's going to express a lot of what you were just
Quite a
talking
bit.
about, Tom.
Quite a bit more.
So
intense,
stay tuned, and we'll be back after these commercials.
And thanks, Debs Krizmanich.
Off we go into the wild blue yonder, climbing high into the sun. Here they come, zooming to meet our thunder. Adam boys, give it a gun. Down we dive, spouting a flame from under. Off with one hell of a roar. We live in fame, we're down in flame. Nothing will stop the U.S. Air Force.
The cross of Jesus is not a downer, but it is an equalizer. You think you're up on top and you're pushing others aside, the cross of Jesus will bring you down. And if you are down and desperate for some company, you have a friend in the crucified Jesus.
Dr. Michael Ziegler this week on The Lutheran Hour.
The Lutheran Hour is brought to you by St. John's Lutheran Church in Canyon City. Listen Sunday mornings at 8 a.m. here on 1400 KRLN. Roll
Gorge Radio's AM 1400 KRLN and Star Country 104.5 FM. And we, along with Fremont and Royal Gorge area businesses, proudly present our Customer Appreciation Day we call Money Day.
Hey y'all, this is Chelsea Lynn inviting you to join me every Tuesday afternoon at 2:30 for your chance to win your share of free money.
That's right, a little cold hard cash could be yours. To win, simply be registered and present at one of these Money Day store locations.
High Country Bank, 150 North Reynolds Avenue. Mountain Wookiees, 1426 Royal Gorge Boulevard. And Waterhole number 1, 1532 Elm Avenue, Canyon City.
So visit a Money Day store location, pick up a registration card, fill it out, and get it back to Royal Gorge Radio. Or go online at royalgorgeradio.com to find out more. Then every Tuesday afternoon at 2:30, be at a Money Day store location. Listen for your name, hear your name, and call 276-0331 within 60 seconds to claim your cash. From Fremont County and Royal Gorge area businesses, AM 1400 KRLN and Star Country 104.5.
All right. So we started out with something a little more lighthearted about our bets, but this one's quite serious. And it's written by my co-host here, Lynn Donovan, about her father. A story her father told them. And Lynn, can you give us a little background about this?
Yeah. My dad was in Vietnam twice, 2 tours, and was having some trouble with the things that he remembered from there. And at one point, the doctors told him that they're having a lot of success with the vets sitting down and writing their thoughts out. Well, my dad was a storyteller in the first place, and so when he wrote it out, he actually ended up with a book, and really well-written book. And it highlighted, it was tough to read, but it highlighted a lot of stuff that made us understand a lot of things. He distributed it to us 3 kids. And this story that I wrote is about the story he wrote. It's not his story that he wrote. It's what I wrote about it. But it's actually from my brother's point of view, because as it turns out, my brother had a illness and went into a coma when he was about 10. And the doctors and the nurses told my parents to sit at his side and talk to him. Just talk to him, and that would help bring him out of the coma. And so he did. And then later, when Dad distributed this story to all of us, my brother told him he's heard these stories before. And we were also amazed because apparently he'd actually heard them while he was in the coma. And so that's what sparked this story. And it's written from my brother's point of view rather than my own.
All right. Thanks, Lynn. And this is a much more serious story. It's got a little bit of graphic stuff in it. And James, really appreciate you volunteering to read this for us. James Ellis is an Army vet. He was in the Army. When were you in there, James?
Back in the 80s, 90s.
80s, 90s, that's, yeah. And he was in for 6 years. That's when I was in the Air Force, too, was the 80s, 90s. So, all right, James, if you would, please read for us 11th chapter by Lynn Donovan.
The 11th chapter by Lynn Donovan. I know I'm going to heaven because I've already been to hell. In 1968. Staff Sergeant Donald L. Conant Sr., retired Army, disabled veteran. Dad sent me a surprise in the mail, but when I read it, I had a surprise for Dad. For months, he had sat at the computer typing, crying, pacing, staring into space. This was no labor of love. It was a confession of his soul. He wrote about the year he spent in Vietnam. We knew very little about that year. All we knew was he had a pathological fear of having a flashback. At times, it was debilitating. I've seen him come home blanched-faced and mousy because he heard about a buddy losing it at a filling station. The buddy shot several people, killing them, because he thought he saw gooks, North Vietnamese soldiers. Loud noises and closed-in spaces terrified Dad. My sisters laughed at him for years, while something in me understood. I hated it at times because we couldn't do the things other fathers had Sons did, like hunting, because he couldn't handle the effects it had on him. He tried once, I'll give him that. But when we got to the woods, holding our guns at the ready, he had to stop. He was in tears as he apologized and hurried back to his truck. We drove home in silence. As soon as we got home, he went to bed. I didn't see him for 3 days. Mom said he was sleeping, but I wondered what I had done. Still, I didn't blame him. After he typed his memoirs into the computer, he printed every gut-wrenching word onto tear-apart track paper, tore the perforated edges off, punched holes in it, and mounted each set in a black manuscript folder. He autographed them for each of us kids. At last, I could read the things he refused to tell any of us, his deepest, darkest secrets. Finally, I would know the causes for his insomnia, why he drank so much, and the reason why he dove into depression when my sister married a Filipino. Dad had a comedic style for telling stories, so I expected humor mixed with some serious, like watching a war movie. I had no idea what horrors would be revealed in this manuscript. A lump formed in my throat as I read his dedication. Dedicated to my family, who I am sure suffered as others did, that had loved ones in Vietnam. I love them all, and I thank them for their support and understanding. DLC. I turned the page and began to read. I laughed and I cried throughout the stories. I couldn't put the manuscript down. The words, the descriptions, the tales were vivid, graphic, and haunting. All the while, familiar. How could they be so familiar to me? I knew this book was a project suggested by VA doctors for Dad to gain control over the insanity he felt nipping at his heels every waking and sleeping moment. But when I read chapter 11, I had to pick up the phone. Dad, I'm reading your book, I told him. If the phone had been chocolate, it would have been oozing between my fingers. I didn't know how to tell him what I knew, so I simply said, "You've told me these stories before." "No, son, I haven't. I haven't told you about any of these things. I just couldn't talk about it." "No, you're wrong. You told me these stories. I remember them distinctly." Silence crackled across the phone line. "How do you remember?" he asked. "I don't know, but I do. I remember lying in a bed. You wore your straw cowboy hat. It lifted up as you pressed your head against the side rail. I remember the red indentation the metal made on your forehead. You talked to me for hours. I think that's when you told me these stories. Was I dreaming? Oh my God." My father's voice broke into sobs. "I wasn't sure until I got to chapter 11, I said, when I read about the local village being slaughtered, about the dead people everywhere, and you guys walking in on the mess." I hesitated. Should I go on? He was already crying. I haven't heard my dad cry too many times in my life. It broke my heart. "Dad, when I read about the children strung upside down in the trees, their mutilated bodies, their Asian eyelids sliced off, and the grotesque death scare of each of them, I knew this was not anything you would talk about. Yet I knew the story. How could I know these stories, Dad, if you didn't tell them to me?" He sniffed and blew his nose. "Dad, are you all right? Son, when you were 10, you got sick." He cleared his throat. "You were in a coma. Doctors told us you were dying." I told them, "Look here, I don't want to know what my son died from. I want to know what's killing him." Those doctors about wet themselves, yes sirring me and running off to find out what was wrong with you. He sniffed and I heard the ice clink against his large plastic cup. He took a long drink. I knew it was RC Cola. The nurses were really nice. They told us to talk to you. Even though you were unconscious, just talk to you. About anything. It didn't matter. Your mom and I thought they were crazy, but we were willing to try anything. So I sat down by your bed and talked. I didn't know if you could hear me or not. Eventually, I ran out of things to say, and you still didn't move. So I started talking about Nam. Now I sniffed. My tears wouldn't stop flowing. Finally, I knew why I had empathized with his fears. He had told me these stories, and I had remembered. That was my surprise for him. I hung up the phone and returned to reading his book. As I read chapter 21, his final chapter, I understand why he couldn't carry a gun in the woods. It was too familiar to the jungle in Vietnam. A flashback really could be triggered without warning. After reading about those mutilated children, I understood why Oriental children's eyes put a chill in his heart. I had admired his ability to overcome this branded nightmare for the sake of his 2 Filipino grandchildren. My dad was once again my hero. He had survived a bloody, senseless police action. His memories had been his prisoner of war. Thank God the VA doctors had suggested he write them down. By doing so, he was able to set them free. He was able to let us know what he had been through. More importantly, he was able to face what he feared most. What we would think of him. He found out we still loved him. We did not judge him for what he had done, what he had seen, or what he did not do. Chapter 11 was the toughest chapter to write. He had told me it required him to stand toe-to-toe with the devil and spit in his face. He feared it would break his sanity, yet he kept pecking the story onto the screen. It was the bravest thing my father ever did. Well, second bravest. First was surviving Vietnam, 1968.
All right, thanks, James. That was a hard one to read, but I think a lot of people will relate to that. And those who don't relate to it need to know what our soldiers went through back then. So we're going to take a break, and we'll be back after we clean ourselves up and, with more Right Time Radio.
Tissues, yes.
Coming up Saturday, November 9th from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m., it's the Festival Fair at Christ Episcopal Church Parish Hall, located at 802 Harrison Avenue in Canyon City.
There will be baked goods, craft items, and attic treasures for sale. Lunch will be served from 11 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. for a cost of $8.
We'll have a drawing for art items and a handmade quilt, as well as a silent auction. That's the Festival Fair, Saturday, November 9th at Christ Episcopal Church at 802 Harrison in Canyon City.
Fertilizer is oftentimes overused. If you use too much or apply it at the wrong time, the fertilizer and your money will wash down the storm drains and into our rivers, ditches, and creeks. There, it will turn into algae. Algae chokes waterways, spoiling rafting, fishing, and swimming. Here are some tips. Use fertilizer sparingly. Do not apply just before a rainstorm. Consider using organic fertilizers that release more slowly. This message is brought to you by the City of Canyon City Stormwater Program. For more information, visit www.canyoncity.org.
Bruce McCandless Veterans Community Living Center in Florence, Colorado. A great place to live and a great place to work. Let's not forget about our American heroes. If you know a veteran, a spouse, or a Gold Star parent in need, call us today. 1-800-283-2668. Bruce McCandless Veterans Community Living Center, caring for America's heroes.
KRLN weather, sunny, warmer, and breezy today. West winds blowing 10 to 15 this afternoon with a high today around 66. Clear skies tonight, the low near 35. Then sunny and much warmer tomorrow, the high around 75. 41 was our high yesterday with a low this morning of 22. 62 degrees, the current temperature at the weather station.
Radio 1400 KRLN.
And we are back with Right Time Radio. We're going to start off this last quarter of the hour with a little poem. This is an author that you've heard us speak of before. Her name is C.M. Stevenson. She wrote a long poem, and it's about Vietnam, which is a pretty rough subject. So she pulled out 3 stanzas for us to read, and they are delightful. And my co-host, Tom, is going to be our narrator. The name of her long poem is Military Memorial, and this is the excerpt from that.
Military Memorial by C.M. Stevenson. How soon you walked in your elders' shoes, marching to war, no chance to choose. You were told of horrors young ears shouldn't hear, as you packed and repacked your military gear. Strong and brave, you are the best, wore medals upon your chest. For victories won and battles lost, broken hearts would be the cost. Your service was given, your sacrifice was great, and will forever be written upon the slate of our grateful hearts for all departed, the memory of all who were lion-hearted.
Very nice. That was a really good poem. Thank you so much, C.M. Stevenson, for submitting that to us for today's tribute. Now we're going to talk about what's going on in Canyon City, and we have our friend Carol McNew here. That's my best Scottish accent. I don't have a very good Scottish. Give me a Texas accent and I'm cool. Carol, thank you so much for being here. We're so excited to have you here. You have got some stuff going on out at Greenwood Pioneer Cemetery for Veterans Day. Tell us about that.
We have 2 ceremonies a year. One is Memorial Day and one is Veterans Day. And the Veterans Day is coming up, actually only 1 day away because it's tomorrow morning. Mm-hmm. And we have a speaker coming in that is very, established and a military man from day one and has done a lot of other things. His name is Ray Brown. We're very proud to be able to have him here. And he is a Buffalo Soldier reenactor. And he is going to be talking about breaking barriers. And I'm sure that since he is a black man and he's going to be talking to us about breaking barriers, I'm sure that we will be really interested in everything he has to say. Our ceremony starts at 11 o'clock at the cemetery, which is almost half a mile from Highway 50. And at the east end of Canyon City, you turn left off of the highway and go about a half a mile, and the cemetery is on your right. And it has a beautiful big gate so that you can see that Greenwood Cemetery is where you're going.
All right, and that's South First Street.
South First Street.
Past the Robinson Mansion.
West side, isn't it? West side?
Mm-hmm.
South side.
West side of Canyon City. And then, all right, well, that is going to be an amazing event. That cemetery is just fascinating. There's so much history out there, and you're on the board that maintains that, correctly?
Actually, I am only on the committee that reminds the city to maintain it, and they do a very good job. Our committee has been in existence for almost 20 years now, and when we go out and do things like clean out the iris beds or put gravel on we usually don't do that sort of thing. We watch the stones, and then we actually pay to have stones repaired. We have, over the years, repaired 85 memorials out there. We have 4,000 burials. There are only 1,600 markers, and they do deteriorate. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of our job, is to make sure that we maintain it. Yeah. Just recently, we have contracted with the schools, and they have made us some white crosses.
Nice.
And so we have been able to mark a lot of the unmarked graves that we knew who was there. We have their names. They're in our registry. And so that's the reason we have some white crosses out there, because we want to mark those unmarked graves.
Right. And what is the oldest grave out there that you know of?
We have a grave from 1865, and we assume this gentleman, his name was W.C. Davis, and I think he was the hired man for the man that homesteaded that whole area in there, W.C. Catlin.
Neat.
And I believe that that was part of Catlin's property, and he actually sold it to the city for a minimal amount over the years. And so that's how our Greenwood Cemetery came to be.
Right. You know, as an author, sometimes we will go walk a cemetery just to pick up names and stuff, and it's just such a rich place to just inhale the history that's out there, you know.
Well, we are so unique. It is a unique cemetery in this state of Colorado, actually, because we have a Union section, GAR section, with an American Stars and Stripes flying over it. Then we have a Confederate section, that's Section R, over on the north side of the cemetery, which is kind of weird. Yeah. But anyway, and it has a national flag of the Confederacy that flies over it. So we have two flags out there, and we're very proud that when they got here to Canyon City, the war was over. We had very many of those veterans that went into business together. They helped each other all the time. The Union veterans actually bought Section R and gave it to the Confederates. They bought the memorial that was there. So this was great cooperation, and we're very proud of that.
Yeah, once again, a veterans tribute. That's wonderful.
Exactly. And so we ask people to come out and honor our veterans there and any other veterans that they know about. But we have 175 veterans from the Civil War out there. And I think that that's something that we are very proud of, and we kind of tout that a little bit.
So let's say again that ceremony is tomorrow at...
It's tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock on November the 9th.
So that's Saturday, November 9th.
Yeah.
1 o'clock, did you say?
11 o'clock.
11 o'clock, good.
Yeah, and it is always held the Saturday before Veterans Day. Every year you can plan on it being the Saturday before Veterans Day.
And then, in addition to Captain Ray Brown speaking, who else will you? Who else will be up?
We're so proud. We have the Canyon City Junior ROTC color guard that comes out. They are just wonderful. Yes, and we have the American Legion color guard. No, it's the American Legion.
American Legion. Sorry.
And then we have our Greenwood Guard that actually raises the flag. We have our bugler, Tim Graben. Yay, Tim Graben. And he plays the bugle for us and also does the invocation or the benediction. We have various people do that for us. But then our speaker speaks about 11:15, somewhere in there. And then once we're done at the Union section, we we stroll over to the Confederate section.
Marching, Carol.
Yeah, and that's what my PT told me to march instead of. Anyway, then we go over there, and we also have a speaker, and usually the daughters of the Confederate veterans sprinkle dirt on each of their graves from their home state. So if Mr. Whittington, who is from Virginia, is lying there, and he gets home state soil sprinkled on his grave. Wow. It's a very moving thing to do.
Yeah, you brought me to tears talking about it.
So anyway,
awesome.
And then it's usually all done by noon. So you're there for an hour, and we just really enjoy it. We encourage people to put on vintage costumes
Clothing,
if they would so like.
Very cool.
And there are usually several of those out there. And our Greenwood Guard always wears their uniforms, of course.
And then at noon they could go to Florence and have pizza at Papa's Pizza.
Yes.
Oh, I didn't say that. I did not say that. Okay, speaking of vintage costumes, you recently did something at the St. Cloud Hotel. Tell us about that real quick.
Now, Carol, wait a minute. First of all, what is your position with the Fremont County Historical Society?
I am president.
Yes, you're president.
You're back.
And
I'm back.
We need there's so many fascinating tales and history around here. If you're the listeners out here need to know that you're trying to preserve that.
Exactly.
It would sure be fun for other people to get involved and come out. How can they get a hold of you?
We urge people to join our historical society, and we are, through our books, we have the self-guided tour books that are available throughout town on various parts of the
which you should read on
cemetery
this station.
Yes, well, maybe I better come in and say that. And Canyon City, Skyline, Florence, Howard, West Fremont. And then we also have our reprints that we just did of the Cara Fisher books, the Along the Avenues and If Walls Could Speak. And I think you would really like them. We are featuring our Prospect Heights Jail Town book, and that is a property of the Historical Society, and we have it open every summer Saturday from 1 to 4.
Okay, so how do they get a hold of the Historical Society? And then we got to talk about these suggestive costume you were wearing.
Okay, the best way to get a hold of the Historical Society is through the Facebook. I have a Facebook page, Fremont County Historical Society, Colorado, because there's a lot of Fremont counties in the West.
Yeah.
And then we have a website, www.fremontheritage.com.
Okay.
And then if you would like to buy a book or you want any other information, it's info@fremontheritage.com.
Okay.
So we don't have a place of business. We do not have an office. We do not spend any money on rent or utilities.
Okay.
And so it is all going, we have a scholarship fund that we buy. We try to give to students or schools or anyone that is interested in doing historical things.
Fun. Okay. Real quick.
What's this costume? Why were you wearing a costume?
Okay, I was wearing a costume. No, it was not. I was asked by the Unbridled Corporation, who owns the St. Cloud Hotel now, to conduct a tour for the DOC employees that had signed up. And this was done on a Thursday, and I and my friend Rita Brunner, who is also a member of a lot of the things that I'm a member of, put on our upstairs maid clothes. We had black blouse and skirt and white aprons and mob caps so that we looked like upstairs maids.
Yeah.
And
awesome.
we conducted our tour, and of course we knew every crack and cranny in that hotel.
Right.
And it turned out very well. If anyone would like to have a tour of the St. Cloud, they need to contact the Unbridled Corporation.
All right.
Okay.
Very cool.
And tell us, we got about 1 minute or maybe 30 seconds left. Tell us just a little bit, where'd that St. Cloud come from?
Well, actually, it was originally built in Silver Cliff because they had the big silver boom going on. There were 5,000 people in Silver Cliff. They actually vied.
Now there's 5.
5.
Just now there's 5.
Now there's 5. You're
Maybe
right.
6.
And they actually vied for state capital against
my
Denver.
gosh.
They were the 3rd most popular town. Well, the silver boom busted, and the hotel was no longer being used up there as a viable. So they tore it down brick by brick, and they shipped it on the railroad track and rebuilt it at 7th and Main in Canyon City.
Wow.
And they also put a 4th story on it. So that's the story.
That is so cool.
Well, thanks for listening to Right Time Radio. We'll be back next Friday at 10 o'clock.
With more veteran tributes.
Office meeting, special party, the highest quality affordable catering in Fremont County. Call 276-3088, 1400 AM, KRLN, Canyon City, Florence.